Fit check. Fit check. Come on. Well, I'm just casual Friday. Come on, look at me. Look at me. Casual Friday.
It's 3 hours, but we're going to look at some of the highlights from the Joseph Robinette Rogan experience. But before we do that, Katie Halper had two of my goats on, John Goatsheimer and also Yanis Varoufakis. And, I'm a little jealous, or no, not even Yanis Varoufakis. I think he had John Goatsheimer and also Norm Finkelgoat.
Power, but power by itself doesn't tell you very much. This is why we lose all these wars. There are real limits to what you can do with all that power. And one of the problems with American policymakers is they have no sense of the limits of military power. They think because we have this giant hammer, we can run around the world and either coerce people or beat them into submission. I think Yanis is exactly right. The Iran war has fundamentally altered our ability to project power into the Persian Gulf. It's done enormous damage to our alliance structure in the Gulf region. So the war has had huge consequences, but the basic power of the United States has not changed at all. We are as powerful as ever, and therefore as dangerous as ever.
This war may prove, unlike all the other wars, a bridge too far for the United States hegemony.
You and I agree completely that military might has an economic foundation, and it's really the economic foundation that matters the most. And despite the military defeat in Vietnam, the United States was doing things at the economic level that, if anything, made it stronger. And that's why military defeat did not matter.
Same with the war on terror. Same with the global war on terror. This is exactly what I've also mentioned from the start, since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury. The major difference here is that this has global economic consequences that are forcing Trump's hand, major global economic consequences that are obviously disrupting, that are obviously harmful to the rest of the world in a way that the global war on terror never did. And therefore, this is genuinely harming America's position as the hegemon. One of the most consequential aspects of America's position as the leader of the free world, as the global hegemonic superpower, is that it has, with its great power, great responsibility. One of the responsibilities that America has is to make sure that, a term I'm going to be using, that I've been using quite a bit, free commerce continues flowing, that there are no impediments, no obstructions to trade. This is our international design. We created this design, and we were the defenders of this design. International capitalism is fickle. International trade is fickle. Commerce has to continue happening. Trade has to continue happening. And a big part of that is to ensure that trade routes have no impediments. Singapore understands this. Okay, we are the guardians of commerce. I mean, one of the operations against Yemen, against the Ansar Allah movement, against the Houthis, was literally called Operation Prosperity Guardian. When the Yemeni brigades, when the Ansar Allah movement was striking at shipping vessels going through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, through the Red Sea, restricting commerce in that regard was unacceptable. We literally called it Operation Prosperity Guardian. That is, unironically, our highest priority. If you cannot guarantee trade from taking place in the Strait of Hormuz, if you can't guarantee ships crossing the Strait of Hormuz with ease, without impediments, without any sort of restrictions, then you're no longer the hegemon. Okay? Now, it's even worse because we caused the blockage. We caused the Strait of Hormuz to close. And we're furthering that damage every single day that we refuse to deal with Iran. What the fuck? Over 300 Hasan the Hun fans reached out to me to tell me why they watched Hasan Piker. Then I spent the next month interviewing, researching, and editing to figure out why people like him. Oh, shit. This is sick.
Hasan Piker.
Whoa. Hell yeah. Stoked to watch this. Stoked to watch it. We'll watch it. We'll watch it later.
I agree completely with that.
It actually helped.
It helped. No,
It actually helped.
It was a force multiplier. That's your argument. And I agree with that. But it also seems you're saying that the situation may be different now. As a result of the Iran war, we have done things to the health of the American economy that are going to damage our position moving forward.
Indeed, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that, look, Donald Trump, in his first year in office now, during Trump 2.0, he secured commitments from the Gulf states of about 3.7 trillion over the next 18 months. Now, Scott Bassett knows that this money is not coming because of the liquidity problems that the Gulf states have. All bets are off regarding that 3.7 trillion that was going to arrive in Wall Street to keep recycling other people's money through the markets of the United States and to finance, importantly, the American military and the American government.
What are you doing? I don't understand what's going on here. She's monitoring the situation, just like we're monitoring the situation with shipping and logistics in the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Malacca, which is always open, obviously, because Singapore is the guarantor of the safety of the Strait of Malacca. But she's monitoring the situation with the HVAC guys walking past the door. We're all monitoring the situation in our own world.
As well as equities, as well as real estate. None of the previous wars did anything to damage that recycling mechanism.
But what would you say to the argument that actually Trump is being motivated by economic considerations, that he knows he has to put an end to this war, and he's sort of accepting your logic at a very general level, and he's backpedaling like crazy?
Are you saying Trump is a Yanist?
Okay, I want to watch. Wait, is there? I need to watch this. I need to watch this full video now. This has got to be
Power, but power by itself doesn't tell
This
you.
is an absolute banger, dude. 555,000 views. We got both. We got Yanis and Mearsheimer.
Very much. This is
We
why
gotta
we
see
lose
this.
all these wars. The question
This is a clinic. This is an absolute clinic, folks.
viewers should be asking is,
God, I'm such a fucking nerd. It's so stupid. We are the nerdiest, dumbest fucking community on the internet. Sometimes I catch myself getting excited to hear what the former Greek finance minister and a Chicago University professor who wrote the book on offensive realism has to say about the Strait of Hormuz crisis. And it's just like, who would ever, like, I never thought that I would be able to share this excitement with an arena full of people. Okay? Fantastic.
is if John says the United States is so powerful,
Yeah, when your own autism scares you a little.
why does it lose all these wars? And the point is that there are real limits to what you can do with all that power.
More Pegaslop has shooters on Twitter. More Pegaslop slop tubers colleagues. Sensitive Society takes this on Singapore meme very seriously. Hasan and his fans are definitely taking a step further than Pegasus. If one crazy person for a tragedy to happen, it takes one crazy person for a tragedy to happen. This is where it gets into dangerous territory. Wait, what? One crazy person in the Singaporean government? Like, what are we talking about?
Now, I think everyone who's watching this video knows exactly what Hasan is trying to do here. Once again, it goes back to the half joking, half serious, and hoping one of these things sticks and the government could investigate Pegasus. But I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I want to say that, but I don't think they're going to kill him live on stream on Twitch. He's trolling, but at the same time, he's...
Dog, more Pegaslop has been calling me a terrorist and a terrorist supporter for every single day for the last 2 years. What are you talking about? Like, I can't even joke about it. I can't even joke about it a little bit. We can't even crack jokes. Soy fascism, dude.
Trolling with the hopes of something sticking. I don't know, like, just be open about it. Just be like, yo, I want Pegasus to be fucking shot. I want him to get kirked. I want him to...
I've never said any of those things, and I don't want any of those things. Look. As someone who is a big business owner, as someone who is responsible for units moving all around the world, as a shipping magnate, as a billionaire international finance guy, shipping magnate, as someone in this community that is really invested in import and exports. This is my passion. My passion is to do business with the nation state of Singapore. And as someone who's very passionate about doing business with the nation state of Singapore, I'm simply saying, check the suit, okay? Simply saying, we want to make sure that Singapore is a country that we can continue doing trade with. But we have concerns. Unfortunately, we love the nation state. We love the city state of Singapore. But we have some concerns that Singapore is not following or applying its laws evenly. That's it. That's it. I am a POC, a person of capital. It's true. That's all we're saying.
But I mean, just be open about it. Just be like, yeah, you know, that's what I want. That would make me feel good. I do respect someone that has open intent instead of just being like, it'll be kind of funny if you get killed. I mean, I wouldn't support that, but I don't know, it'd be kind of funny. Yeah.
I've never said those words, but I guess they're hallucinating.
The thing with Hasan and his joke.
The only thing that's being killed right now is our hopes and dreams for continuing to do commerce with the nation of Singapore. That's it. That's it. The only thing that's being killed are our hopes and dreams to continue doing trade, to continue improving the GDP of the beautiful city-state of Singapore.
Jokes and his whole satire, it just doesn't hit. It's just not funny. So at this point, it's
not funny.
low-key fair game. I think we should do the same to Hasan. Unironically, this is more harassment than Pegasus.
Wait, what? Loki, we should do the same to Hasan? As in what? Call me a terrorist for the past 3 years? 2 years? Isn't that what you guys have been doing already? This is like when Donald Trump says, we're going to bomb Iran extra hard. It's like, wow, really? Really? This is going to change the dynamic dramatically, folks. This time it's different. This is like when Epstein comes out and he's like, you know what? The gloves are off. We're going to start harassing Hasan and everyone that he's actually encountered. It's like, wow, this is going to be a real different experience for me as opposed to the last 6 years for Epstein, as opposed to the last 2 years for these guys. Very different. How is this more harassment than a daily video for 500 plus days? They're delusional. I know, it's really funny. But I'll be honest, the more they do this, the more I want to retaliate by, continuing to fuck around and meme around because it's obviously pissing them off.
has ever done. Pegasus just talks about him and his shitty takes that he sees on Twitter. All right. I don't think Pegasus has reported Hasan to the US government. I think he talks about it, but I don't think he's ever directly tried to DM Trump. Be like, yo, Trump, could you hook me up? So this guy, Hasan, he gotta go. I don't think he's doing that. And if he has, based Pegasus. But Hasan.
Oh, so he's not doing that. You're suspecting I'm doing that, but if Pegasus was doing that, then that would be base. Got it. I like that these guys are so one fucking speed where they just contradict themselves in real time, in broad daylight, in the same commentary, in a 1 minute and 24-second video.
Hasan and his fans are definitely taking it a step further than Pegasus has. And when you do stuff like this, you're just asking to being harassed back. So, and the thing with Hasan and his audience is that I wouldn't be surprised if one out of those thousands of people unironically flies to Singapore and tries to do something to him. It only takes one crazy person out of thousands, out of millions, for a tragedy to happen. So this is where it gets into dangerous territory. It's like if Pegasus was like, yo, if you see Hasan in the street, shoot him, I would be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? And I feel the same way when people are alluding to violence when we know what
That's an insane fantasy. First of all, no one has to worry about flying to Singapore, at least myself. I would like to fly to Singapore. I would like to do trade in Singapore, but for the time being, I can't do any trade in Singapore because I'm worried about my stalker and my cyber harassment. The guy that's been doing cyber harassment against me is unfortunately doing so from the nation state of Singapore, the city state of Singapore, and therefore I probably will not be traveling to Singapore anytime soon. I wanted to. I always think about it. I dream about it every day. But unfortunately, I cannot. I cannot do commerce for the time being in the beautiful state of Singapore.
people are capable of. I actually think that Hasan is going to pull up to Singapore and shoot Pegasus in the head and then hump his body. No, I don't think that's actually going to happen. In case it needed to be said out loud, no, I don't think that's the case. But after everything we've seen over the last few months, years, we know how obsessive fans get. We know the political climate.
Wait. What I don't understand, Soy Right is awesome. I love when right wingers literally even jokingly receive like a fraction of pushback and they straight up turn around and they're like, "Oh my God, you want to murder me?" How does this work? How does this work at all? Like if you've obsessively made videos twice a day for like the last 300 plus days or 150 plus days. I don't know if you've made daily videos, because I think the number of videos that he's made on me is more than 400 now. And in those videos, he's calling me a terrorist. In those videos, he's slandering me, defaming me from the nation state of Singapore, which has serious laws about this sort of thing, for the record. Serious laws that they're not following through on, at least for the time being, which is a little bit disappointing, but I still I still have hope in my heart that one day I can freely travel to the state of Singapore. England scored. Oh, shit. Good, I guess. Okay. Again, no response. There's so much other shit going on. Talk about Clav or something. Why do you guys get so mad? I have 40 ships waiting, stuck at sea, waiting for a resolution. Stop. There's so much other shit going on. Talk about Clav or something. Gold. This guy is literally ADHD brain. But yeah, it's funny that he's saying that like the 2 times where, or what? How many times have I mentioned him now? Like 5? Like the 5 total times that I've mentioned him on stream after 400 plus videos, and he's like, well, you want to murder him. So what does more Pegaslop want to do then to me? What does more Pegaslop want to do to me then with the 400 plus videos that he's done? I mean, he is clearly a a significantly large audience.
And it only takes one unhinged loser to be like, yeah, I gotta worship my Lord and Savior Hasan, and my Lord and Savior Hasan would want me to fly out to Singapore and take care of business, if you will. It only takes one unhinged individual for shit to get out of control real fast. Hasan has been a lot more extreme. I just don't want this to escalate.
What is this? Sensitive Society has too many Hasan videos to count. Here are a few. Bye-bye Hasan. More Pegasus came all over Hasan and he's mad. Lawsuit. Hasan just got exposed big fucking time. Yeah, I don't really know who the fuck this guy is, but wonder if he's violating his local rules. Yeah, I don't understand how he doesn't apply this logic to making those videos on you, because again, More Pegasus is based and I'm evil. I think that's what it is. Yeah, starting to feel like he's threatening me.
To a tragic level when
when More Pegasus calls Hasan a terrorist 500,000 times, that's based in good. When Hasan makes a joke talking about being an international shipping magnate, whoa, buddy, are you trying to murder him? Are you trying to murder him with a gun? No, I'm not, actually. I don't think More Pegasus is trying to murder me. You know, I think he's just farming. I think he's just trying to make money. It just happens to be in violation of Singaporean laws for cyber stalking, mass harassment, and also defamation. When he says you want to do business with Singapore, do they actually think you want to take care of him with a gun? Yeah, I don't know why. That's a little bit of an escalation, don't you think? Anyway, we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. Trump is just chirping, but first we're going to get back to John Goatsheimer. Enormous damage of U.S.'s Iran war laws.
May prove, unlike all the other wars, a bridge too far for the United States hegemony.
With the Iran war, how much does this defeat challenge the U.S. as a hegemon, if at all?
Look, losing wars has been, over the last 40, 50 years, utterly consistent with the expansion of the hegemonic power of the United States. The United States lost the Vietnam War, they lost the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Libya is a basket case as a result of the Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama intervention. Look at Bosnia today, for instance. It's a cesspit. So, failure can be particularly useful to the project of enhancing American hegemony. Let's not forget that ever since the Nixon shock in 1971, the United States financial hegemony has been expanded the deeper into the red the federal government and the overall American economy is getting. It's a very strange hegemon, the United States, and nothing like the British Empire, nothing like the Roman Empire, the Portuguese Empire. Failure can be the foundation for success. But I think that, to answer your question, this may prove to be a bridge too far, a failure too far, a failure that reverberates within the base of MAGA, blue-collar workers who have voted Trump in a second time are suffering massively. They don't understand why he had to go in there, like we don't understand. If we don't understand, why would they? There is no patriotic fervor about continuing the war in Iran or even supporting the war that did take place. And with the exception of the Permian Basin, where the frackers have really loved that war because it has kept the price of oil in the sweet spot, neither too low, so that they can be profitable, nor too high, so that aggregate demand and demand for their oil doesn't tank as a result of too high a price. With the exception of the Permian Basin, I think that the MAGA constituency, Trump's support base, even the tech lords, big tech, have not been happy with this. They may have managed to continue their spending spree and splurge on AI and so on, and the stock exchange is doing really very well, with the exception of the last few days, but that could be a blip, who knows. I genuinely think that losing the Gulf states, losing that consensus amongst the Gulf states that there was no alternative to being under the American security umbrella, and there was no alternative to being absolutely wedded to the dollar system. Losing that could prove in the future a very costly failure, a failure which, unlike all the previous failures, is undermining the hegemonic power of the United States.
I just wanted to bring up, if I may, and then I will hand you the mic, of course, John, but a fascinating CBS news poll. This speaks to what you just brought up, Yanis, about the MAGA base. So found that 56% of self-identified MAGA voters said the U.S. should end the conflict with Iran now. 44% said that, sorry, I'm just trying 44% said the U.S. should continue the war until, quote, Iran gives up more, end quote. For all self-identified Republicans surveyed, 60% believe the conflict should end, and 40% said war should continue to get more Iranian concessions. Also, 47% of MAGA supporters say the agreement is better for the U.S., while 12% believe it's better for Iran, and 41% say it's about equal. Among all Republicans, only 39% said the deal is better for the U.S. 19% see it as better for Iran, and 42% see the deal as equal for both the U.S. and Iran. So, just some interesting stats.
If I could make a quick response on that, and then I want to make a number of points in response to what Yanis said, and I'm very curious what he will say about what I said. But first on you, Katie. I saw a poll that said that 67% of Americans want to end the war right away. 67%. Furthermore, both the Senate and the House, as you well know, have just passed resolutions calling for an end to the war. The last time I checked, these are two bodies of Congress that are dominated by Republicans. And both houses of Congress, again, called for ending this war. So Yanis made the point that there are many different elements inside the national security state here in the United States, and he's absolutely correct. But the point is, if Trump wants to go
Why are there no anti-war riots? Because Americans are clearly very comfortable, far too comfortable with death and destruction overseas, even if they don't want it, even if they think it's like stupid, even if they're against it, they're still fine with it until they're impacted by it. And so far, because of the strategic petroleum reserves that the Trump administration has released, the oil and gas market has not been impacted, at least in the United States of America, in ways that frustrate people to take action. It's obviously, look, gas prices at the pump are high, right? But it's not high enough. And then on top of that, there haven't been a lot of significant, like there hasn't been a significant enough number of troops that have been put in harm's way. Like we're virtually insulated from the reality of this conflict on the ground. That's just, America's proximity. That happens to have something to do with America's proximity to the conflict. Usually, we don't get to experience the negative consequences in the way that like the Asian markets do, in the way that the European markets do, in the way that the African markets do. And that's part of the reason why, especially because we don't have boots on the ground right now. And as long as we don't have boots on the ground, most Americans are just going to think about this as an afterthought.
Head and appeal to the American public, and then ally himself with those interests inside the national security state who want to end this war, he could do it. This is a very unpopular war. It's a foolish war, and all sorts of people understand. I've
already brought this up with respect to Israel, right? there are plenty of Americans who are obviously frustrated by, Israel's violence, but the most salient point is twofold. One, Israel does this with a fuck ton of American tax dollars and with American munition. We don't like that. And two, perhaps even more consequentially, Israel also is constantly demanding censorship and firings of American employees on American businesses for speaking out against Israel. That is what makes Americans extra frustrated. Do you understand? That's what it is. Americans see the death and destruction. They hear that this death and destruction is only happening with our tax dollars. Americans don't like that. But then on top of that, when any American calls this out, and then a bunch of Israel First organizations come in and say, you have to be fired, you have to lose your job, you're going to get harassed. Americans fucking hate that. That is a big part of the reason for why there has been this, why this major sea change took place in the attitude that Americans display as it pertains to Israel and our relationship with Israel.
But I want to go back to what Yanis said, and I'm very curious how he thinks about what I'm going to say. His point that the United States has lost all these wars is correct. I think about this all the time. I was in the American military from 1965 to 1975, which amazingly was coterminous with the Vietnam War.
Doors open.
We suffered a devastating defeat in the Vietnam War. And we have suffered significant defeats in almost every war except the first Gulf War in 1991.
Who are you barking at? Who do you? Are you monitoring the situation? Kaya. Strange.
Since then, it's really quite remarkable how bad our track record is. But nevertheless, losing those wars has not mattered very much for our position in the world. And I think you were getting at this, Yanis. And if you just go back to the Vietnam War, we suffered this catastrophic defeat in 1975. The North Vietnamese win a decisive victory. The Americans are humiliated. 14 years later, the Cold War ends, and then the Soviet Union collapses, and we enter the unipolar moment where the United States is Godzilla. It's quite remarkable. The Vietnam War had hardly any effect at all. And most of those other, if not all of those other defeats, hardly mattered at all for our position in the world. So the question is, what's going on here? And here's how I think about it. I think that I'm a structuralist, and what I care about is power. And I'm concerned with how powerful the United States is, how powerful China is, what the relative balance of power is between them, and so forth and so on. And the point I would make is that when you think about power, what you want to look at is the population size of a country and how much wealth it has. And when you talk about wealth, what's embedded in that is where it is in terms of developing sophisticated technologies. Excuse me. And the United States has been, for a long time, and still is, a remarkably powerful country. And it promises to be a remarkably powerful country for the future because it is so wealthy and it has such a large population. Of course, the same is true of China as well. I don't want to take away from the Chinese on this front. But losing in the Gulf is not going to affect how powerful the United States is. What has happened here has much more to do with our ability to project power. You can have power, but power by itself doesn't tell you very much. This is why we lose all these wars. The question viewers should be asking is, if John says the United States is so powerful, why does it lose all these wars? And the point is that there are real limits to what you can do with all that power. And one of the problems with American policymakers is they have no sense of the limits of military power. They think because we have this giant hammer, we can run around the world and either coerce people or beat them into submission. And the truth is, you can't do that. There are real limits to what you can do with military power, as we have found out on countless occasions. So when I look at the Gulf War, when I look at the Iran war, I think Yanis is exactly right that this has fundamentally altered our ability to project power into the Persian Gulf. It's destroyed our basing structure in the region, and it's done enormous damage to our alliance structure in the Gulf.
Once you basically gave the game away and you proved to every Gulf leadership, every Gulf nation leadership, that there's only one country that you care about, and their foreign policy agenda is far more important than the potentially trillions of dollars of economic activity that comes from all the other countries, that they're secondary to your love and your unlimited loyalty to not only Israel, but Israel's belligerents. It's over. Now, look, these guys are still fairly vassalized, and it doesn't matter. And they'll take a big beating. And that much is clear. That's why Saudi Arabia is currently doing crazy shit with Yemen, right? But ultimately, if these other countries are recognizing that America is going to place them secondary, and America is running out of bandwidth to even defend them as they go further into this conflict, as though they, because Saudi Arabia is going further into this conflict by reinstituting the blockade that it has over Yemen, right? That was a big test. Would the Ansar Allah envoys that went to Iran be able to come back into Sana'a? Saudi struck the airport in Sana'a. Luckily, nobody died, but they had to fly around and land in a different airport. But that was obviously a big fuck you to Yemen. That is the reason why the Houthis are now saying they're going to restart striking Saudi oil facilities. I don't know how, I don't know where they go from here. But that is an escalation from the Saudi side. That's an escalation from the Saudi side that Americans were obviously invested in. But Saudi could have said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to implement a blockade over Yemen. We're just going to let them, we're going to let them travel. We're going to let the Houthis travel with ease. The fact that they're doing that means that they're still vassalized, because this comes at great cost to the Saudi refineries.
Region. So the war has had huge consequences, but the basic power of the United States has not changed at all. We are as powerful as ever, and therefore as dangerous as ever. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Yanis.
John, I will take what you said and go one step beyond. You juxtaposed the massive.
The most telling detail about this attack, yes, you read that right. Saudi Arabia used $2 million Storm Shadow cruise missiles to hit Sana'a's airport runway from a safe distance, yet failed to achieve the main objective. It says a lot about their fear of Yemeni air defenses. The most telling detail about this attack, Saudi Arabia denies to have attacked their proxy and aiding claims to have done it, as if they had Storm Shadow cruise missiles or fighter jets. Saudi Arabia is clearly afraid of retaliation, and it should, in my opinion. I mean, they have the remnants of the missile. The rat fucking has begun. Yes, I saw that. There's two things that happened in Michigan. Oh, every day there's another insane thing that comes out of Michigan politics that I absolutely despise.
Defeat of the United States in Vietnam, which you experienced when you were in the military. And then you said a few short years after that, the United States won the Cold War. So it didn't matter. No, I think it did matter. I think that the Vietnam War, not on its own, was part of the mechanics by which America, the United States, won the Cold War. Now, before you think that I'm utterly crazy, let me try to explain this. In the end, after I mentioned the Nixon shock in 1971, for me, 15th of August 1971, alongside the fall of 2008, these are two pivotal moments for us to understand the United States, to understand the world. So, 1971, Nixon destroys the Bretton Woods system, which was the foundation for the first phase of American hegemony after the Second World War, a system of fixed exchange rates, a planned system. It was almost, economic planning without public ownership of the means of production. It was a remarkable system. Let's not beat about the bush. And yet the United States blew it up. And had Nixon not blown it up, some Democrat would have blown it up. LBJ wanted to blow it up before that. Why? Because that whole system was predicated upon America being the surplus nation, the surplus political economy, recycling its own surpluses in Europe and in Japan, so as to create the aggregate demand for American net exports and to maintain American surpluses. Well, that could no longer continue because by 1968, 69, 1970, America was a deficit country. And therefore, the Bretton Woods system had to be blown up. That blowing up is what gave rise to the immense power that you're talking about, John, that led to the United States winning the Cold War. And the Vietnam War played an important part. There were two main spending sprees by the federal government in the United States, which led to the budget deficits and the deficits in the trade accounts of the United States. One was the Vietnam War, massive spending with a lot of leakage. A lot of that demand went overseas, and that's how Southeast Asia was effectively built up through expenditures that went in the direction of the military project in Southeast Asia. And the Great Society program of LBJ, which was also related to the tensions, the social tensions that were unleashed by the Vietnam War, especially in the South, in places like Texas and so on. So that's what I'm trying to do, if you're following me. I'm connecting the defeat in Vietnam with the overturning, undermining, blowing up of the Bretton Woods system, which did what? The answer comes from a certain gentleman that you all remember, Paul Volcker. Because it was 1970 when Henry Kissinger put a question to the people working for him back then at the National Security Council. And the question was, typical Kissinger question, how do we maintain our hegemony now that we're a deficit country? And Paul Volcker was the guy amongst his minions, Kissinger's minions, who said, well, the answer is we don't do austerity, we don't go German, we don't tighten our belt, we boost our deficits, and we make the capitalists of the rest of the world pay for it. So essentially, whereas in the first 2 decades after the war, America was recycling its own surpluses to Europe and Asia and Japan. After 1971, it was recycling other people's surpluses. So essentially, the trade deficit of the United States became something like a gigantic vacuum cleaner that was sucking
the financialization of the American economy, which focused on finance capital from this point onward, which is part of the reason why we have no industrial base whatsoever, which is part of the reason why we have a hyper reliance on countries like China, and therefore having any sort of militant posture against China, which is responsible for 30% of our trade and so much of our components that we use in even our domestic manufacturing, makes this talk of going to war with China all the more ridiculous. Once again, this entire system relies on stability. It is a very fragile system, which is precisely the reason why Iran currently is eating our lunch. Iranian retaliation to the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian retaliation against commercial shipping, but also Iranian retaliation against financial instruments, like different targets, like counter value targets that signal that they're willing to wage war at the global level against America and hurt American capital. Once again, exposes the fragility of the international financial system that we have designed, and it also shows, it also greatly limits. It also greatly limits the timeline that America has. We cannot withstand a unlimited battlefront if the people that we're fighting against are striking not only oil and gas tankers, they're not only striking commercial shipping and restricting access to a major global choke point like the Strait of Hormuz, but then they're also potentially damaging American capital. There's nothing that I mean, there's only so much. There's only so much so many penalties that we can withstand, okay? That's it.
Into the territory of the United States, the net exports of Japan, of Germany, later China. And what was happening with the dollar profits of the Japanese, the French, the German industrialists, capitalists? Well, they were being recycled through Wall Street in the form of American debt, public debt, some equity, and a lot of real estate. Therefore, people like Trump got to be what they are. And it was this, together with what Paul Volcker did once he was at the Fed, which he boosted massively interest rates in order to arrest inflation, which was a really, really lethal blow at countries like Romania, like Poland. The Solidarnosc emerged because of the great indebtedness.
Remember, escalation dominance, and the way that America's target priorities have been this time around has been fairly limited, with the exception of the unconfirmed report that we're seeing right now that the United States hit a hospital. Okay. Fars News Agency claims that the United States hit a hospital, recently, in this last round of strikes. But up until that, America was actually targeting with as much accuracy as possible, targeting Iranian strike capabilities. They were limiting their targeting operations to everything that pertains to Iran's capabilities of blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? Not talking about the Minob school. I'm saying, guys, I'm talking about this round. In this round, post MOU, post Memorandum of Understanding, America's targets were ports, radar facilities, and areas where they think Iran are capable of striking the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? Oh my God, everyone is saying a school, a hospital. Jesus fucking Christ. Post MOU. Once the Memorandum of Understanding was implemented, I'm not talking about Operation Epic Fury, okay? When Operation Epic Fury was taking place, of course, they expanded their targets, and they started off by blowing up a fucking school for little girls. When the Americans initially started post MOU, their strikes were limited to areas where Iranians were striking the Strait of Hormuz from, radar facilities and ports where they could have, like a potential Iranian submarine or naval assets. Okay? Post MOU. We're expanding on the strike package. Like, the American side is expanding on the strike package. They're hitting nuclear bases once again. This will also lead the Iranians to escalate alongside the American strikes. Okay? Iran has, for the most part, targeted ships and have maintained its posture as the sole controller of the Strait of Hormuz. That's all they've done thus far. If America strikes Iranian oil and gas facilities, Iran will strike back against American oil and gas facilities. Having said that, the regime has just bombed the children's hospital in the Iranian city of Ahwaz. It is being evacuated. Iran has been destroying Bahrain and Kuwait. Yes. Iran has been hitting Bahrain, Kuwait, and Gulf countries, but specifically American military installations in said Gulf countries. Okay? So far, with some limited exceptions, Iran has been trying to damage as much American military and Navy facilities as possible. When they hit Bahrain, they're not just hitting Bahrain, the country. They're hitting the American naval assets in Bahrain. They're hitting the American facilities in Bahrain. Okay? Now, so far, Iran has only continued to follow America up the escalation ladder, which means it's 1-1 now. Apparently, England ate a goal. Updates for those who are paying attention or want to know what the fuck's going on with the England-Argentina game. Yes, Bahrain houses the 5th Fleet of the U.S. Navy. So when Iran is striking Bahrain, they're not just striking Bahrain randomly. They're targeting the 5th Fleet. But now that the United States has struck a children's hospital in Ahvaz, I suspect that the Iranian targets will shift as well. This is the exact same pattern. This is the exact same pattern that the tit-for-tat strikes took place during Operation Epic Fury prior to the MOU. Okay? When America or Israel expands on their strike packages, when they start targeting different areas, when they target a bank, for example, they hit the Iranian bank to claiming that this was a way to stop them from paying the IRGC or whatever. They turned around and they struck back against financial facilities in the Gulf, American financial facilities, or even threatened that they would hit financial facilities. Shahid Baghay Hospital in Ahvaz, Iran, evacuated after several American missiles struck near the medical center. Iranian TV says the evacuation is temporary. The hospital is located near sites hit in the ongoing wave of U.S. strikes on Ahvaz.
Of the Polish communist political economy to the United States. And, when interest rates rose from 3% to 21%, that was a major blow at the Warsaw Pact. It played a significant role, not the only role. There were other things as well, of course, Afghanistan and so on, and the decrepitude of the Soviet economy. But so what I'm trying to connect here, in the context of what you're saying, John.
Yeah, here is the other update. Reuters, shipping companies are avoiding using a U.S. military-guided transit scheme through the Strait of Hormuz after a wave of Iranian attacks on vessels sparked safety concerns, 7 maritime security and shipping industry sources said. In June, the U.S. military had helped vessels through as a part of an operation involving scores of secretive ship-to-ship oil transfers to keep the Gulf energy exports flowing, using aerial and water drones as well as helicopters to guide tankers. The U.S. doesn't seem to have any control over the situation, one shipping source said, adding that their company had opted not to sail through the strait due to crew safety concerns and the deteriorating security situation. Yet shippers are evaluating the route on the Omani side of the strait as increasingly dangerous after a wave of attacks on ships. Iran started striking the Omani coastline and the ships that were transiting through the Omani coastline with American aid, and that's the reason why the international shipping companies decided that route is no longer safe either. There's obviously a risk profile here. There's a risk calculation, and from their perspective, they're not going to put their assets in harm's way. They're not going to put their assets in the crosshairs of Iranian missiles, Iranian drones. Iran's continued ability to target ships sailing through the Omani route means the Trump administration's proposed solution to keep the ships moving is unlikely to work, said Torbjorn Solved, principal Middle East analyst with risk intelligence company Verisk Maplecroft. Do you understand? Why aren't they just going through the Iranian side? Great question. That's the whole point. That's what the Iranian side is trying to get them to do. Right now, as we're speaking, by the way, the U.S. House is voting against Representative Thomas Massey's amendment that would cut U.S. military aid to Israel. 103 Democrats have voted in favor of Thomas Massey's amendment. 98 of them have voted against it. Some of the more high-profile Democrats that have openly mentioned they would be voting against this are, of course, Hakeem Jeffries. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries told colleagues Tuesday that he will vote against an amendment to strip $3.3 billion in annual U.S. military aid to Israel, and said Democratic leadership would not whip the vote, leaving members free to vote their conscience rather than follow a party line. The amendment introduced by Republican Representative Thomas Massey would bar funds in the State Department appropriations bill from being spent for Israel, effectively blocking the foreign military financing provided under the 2016 U.S.-Israel Memorandum of Understanding. This is the Obama MOU, $3.3 billion yearly for the next decade, right? This is the last year that the MOU, after this year, the MOU expires. In a letter to colleagues, obtained by Dropsite, Jeffries called the amendment overly broad, saying it would also hit humanitarian aid and refugee resettlement while restricting efforts to confront Hamas, Hezbollah, and other organizations. He cited J Street's opposition to the amendment, explaining his position. Jeffries wrote that American policy in the Middle East must change, but that the U.S. commitment to Israel must remain ironclad, and any future agreement should preserve Israel's qualitative military edge. The Democratic leader's stance runs against his party base. A May 2026 New York Times Siena poll found that 74% of Democrats oppose providing more economic and military aid to support Israel, while only 20% supported doing so. To Hakeem Jeffries, I say,
what gives?
But of course, Hakeem Jeffries' retaliation probably is,
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
J Street said Tuesday it would support Democrats regardless of whether they voted yes or no or present, calling the amendment overboard, but acknowledging that the vote presented a rare opportunity for lawmakers to register opposition to continue U.S. military aid to Israel. This is purely symbolic. And the reason for why it's unfortunately purely symbolic is because there is enough votes, as always, both from the Democrats and the Republicans, to continue giving $3.3 billion to Israel. Here are some of the pro-Israel Democrats being pressed on voting against their base by Dropsite's Julian himself.
Closely in line with my leader.
And what about with your base?
Look, I fight terrorism. That's what...
Is the IDF committing terrorism by bombing civilian infrastructure and committing war crimes?
Dropsite's Julian Andreoni here. Democratic leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, has put out a statement saying he's going to vote no on Thomas Massey's amendment to cut all military aid to Israel. But 74% of Democratic voters, per the latest New York Times poll, support cutting all economic assistance to Israel. I wanted to come up here and ask pro-Israel Democrats who are facing contested primaries where they stand in this fight. Are they with their base or are they with Democratic leadership in D.C.? Let's see what they had to say.
Leader Jeffries came out and said that he's not going to support cutting the military aid to Israel, but 74% of the Democratic voting base supports cutting off all economic ties with Israel. You're going to side with Leader Jeffries or the voting base on that?
I'm with Leader Jeffries on this one.
You're going to vote against the Massey's amendment?
Yes.
And why are you going to go against 74% of the base?
Look at Mr. Jeffries' statement. He's very articulate about his positions. Look, we got to fight terrorism. And what happened on October 7th is not acceptable. And we got to keep fighting. And
what about what happened before October 7th? Do you recognize the Nakba?
Eliminate terrorism all across the world.
All right, thanks.
All right. I'm a no on the amendment.
Do you think it's out of lockstep with where the base is?
I wouldn't vote for anything that Thomas Massey puts forward at the moment, especially after he ran an ad with a Jewish star in it, which was universally condemned as anti-Semitic.
Oh, that's why. Got it. Not because you're a fucking unbelievable dick eater of Israel. Remember, he's of course, he is a Ron DeSantis Democrat. Openly has mentioned that he is to the right of the current Republican Party at times when it comes to dealing with American foreign policy. Yeah, Sri Tanadar obviously is also going to be primaried, inshallah.
So if he were to put forth the Epstein Files Transparency Act again, you would have voted against it?
That was with Ro Khanna. I voted on that.
So Oliver Larkin is running against Jared Moskowitz. Donovan McKinney is running against Sri Tanadar, who we just saw.
Jewish star in it, which was universally condemned as anti-Semitic.
So if he were to put forth the Epstein Files Transparency Act again, you would have voted against it?
That was with Ro Khanna. I voted on that.
So if he had a Democratic co-sponsor on something, you'd vote for it?
I wouldn't be helping Thomas Massey on anything.
Even the Epstein Files Transparency?
No, of course I'd vote for Epstein, and I voted for that, but that was also before he did that nonsense.
I believe it's in our national interest to have a liberal democracy in the Middle East, and I will not be voting on the Massey Amendment.
You believe Israel's a democracy?
I believe it's the only liberal democracy in the Middle East.
Are there any other democracies that orient citizenship and rights based on ethnicity, race, or nationality? there are laws that, for instance, the law that just passed in the Knesset that gives Palestinian prisoners different punishments than Israeli prisoners.
Are these people bots? Yes, they are. They are the reason why people see the Democratic Party as controlled opposition. Okay? Because we are. The Democrats are controlled opposition because there are hundreds of Democrats in Congress that are first and foremost invested in defending Israel and defending Israel's interests. And there is no way in hell that they would actually do the bidding of their constituents. And they are servants of the state of Israel. That's it. And they're not just servants of the state of Israel, they're servants of the highest bidder, right? And obviously, Israel pays well. That's it.
I mean, is that a democratic system?
Would you want there's a hot debate in Israel right now about what things look like moving forward.
Yeah.
But I believe it's in our national interest.
And if you're wondering why we don't get to, if you're wondering why no change happens, these people are bought and paid for. And if you're wondering why no change happens, I mean, look at Haley Stevens. Haley Stevens also, I believe, voted no. Okay. Haley Stevens is currently running for Senate against Abdul El-Sayed in the state of Michigan. Okay. If you're wondering why these people get away, with their lack of interest in abiding by the overwhelming majority of their base of support, well, the reason why they get away with it is because of what's taking place in the Senate race in Michigan in the primaries. Haley Stevens has gotten $50 million in outside expenditures. I believe 30 to 40 million of that right now is coming from AIPAC and AIPAC shell corporations, shell PACs. That's it. They dupe the base. They take advantage of the loose or lack of restrictions on how much outside money could be spent in these races. And they lie and they smear. And there's obviously a network internally. There's obviously a network of Democratic consultants and pliant media operatives that will go along with this slander campaign and will do everything in their power to make sure that people are duped, that people are not paying attention. And if people are paying attention, hopefully they will learn something awful about a candidate that will stand against corporate PACs like Abdul El-Sayed, and they'll vote against Abdul El-Sayed. That's exactly how this goes. That's exactly how this works. Breaking, a majority of Democrats in the House have just voted to cut $3.3 billion a year in U.S. military aid to Israel. Representative Thomas Massie, the leader of the amendment, was the only Republican in support. If one more person shows me Chuck Schumer farting in the Senate, I'm going to fucking end the broadcast. Okay? Please stop. I don't give a shit. Okay? I know he farted while he was delivering a speech. You guys are fucking literally children, dude. Holy shit. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God. Oh my God. We'll get to it. Okay? Fuck, man. I can't even have a serious conversation about, like, the way that moneyed interest operates in American politics and subverts democracy at the behest of a foreign nation state without motherfuckers being like, well, Chuck Schumer farted. Shut the fuck up. Sherman on the Massey Amendment. If you care about not only our Middle East policy, but you care about the Democratic Party's position with the American people, then you must vote no on this amendment. This is an attack on the Israeli people, says Representative Brad Sherman. Another one of my fucking dumbass ops.
If you care
1 million from AIPAC.
About not only our Middle East policy, but you care about the Democratic Party's position with the American people, then you must vote no on this amendment. Now, that does not mean that there will not be future reductions in our aid to Israel. That does not mean that we will not try to change Israeli policy. But this amendment goes as far as it possibly can to put us on the side not of those who would shoot down the missiles that are aimed at civilian neighborhoods in Israel, but on those who are cheering those missiles. And then we're told that the amount of money involved is the focus. This is $3.3 billion, but that is about an 80th of the aid that we have provided Ukraine and that we should have provided Ukraine. So this is not an attempt to divert a large portion of our money from Israel. This is an attack on the Israeli people, and I yield to the gentlelady from Florida.
Thank
These people are disgusting, dude. They're disgusting. They're enemies of the American people. It doesn't matter if they are Democrats. It doesn't matter if they're Republicans. I mean, the damn near entirety of the Republican Party is on board with this, and a big chunk of Democrats are also on board with the continuation of $3.3 billion. The only reason why Hakeem Jeffries didn't whip the votes for it is because he knows it's going to pass anyway. Okay? In a normal situation, if the Democrats were like a real party and they cared about the needs of their base, if democracy was real in this fucking country, then Hakeem Jeffries would be whipping votes in favor of Thomas Massey's amendment. Okay? The entirety of the Democratic Party would respond together collectively to say, yes, we're voting for this amendment. We're going to make sure that we cut the $3.3 billion in money that we're spending to Israel. 74% of our base wants this. Okay? 74%. It's insane to me. Yes, 30 years of hurt has now expanded to 60 years of hurt. It's now going to be 64 years of hurt. Okay? Calm down, guys. It's not coming home. Vargentina won. If you're wondering how these people could be so out of step with the demands of their base, 74% want. 74% want to cut off aid to Israel. Look no further than the $50 million dumped into the Michigan Senate race where Abdul is running against an AIPAC stooge. I assume Haley Stevens voted in favor of this, right? Or voted against this, right? I would be shocked if she voted. I'd be shocked if she voted yes on the Massey amendment. The roll call isn't updated yet. It's not available, but someone must have watched it live, right? Yeah. I mean, Adam Johnson also points to this, but it's a fairly obvious point. Everyone knows when you're the most electable, you need $30 million in AIPAC money to win a primary. The more AIPACs Republican donors inject into your Democratic primary campaign, the more widespread, organic, and enthusiastic your general election appeal is. It's just common sense. Everything I don't like is AIPAC, An Idiot's Guide to Politics. AIPAC has literally spent $30 million, and this guy goes, oh, why are you pointing out the AIPAC? I don't know what to tell you, but acting as if it's acknowledging this material reality is delusion is objectively insane. There's no way for you to see it yet. Roll call is not available yet, but I assume on C-SPAN, if someone was watching, they probably saw Haley Stevens vote no. Updated roll call, she voted no. Well, it's shocking.
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
That she voted no on that. Yeah, she voted no. There it is. Right? This is the right one, right? Yeah. Status failed. No, this is January 22nd, dude. This is not the correct. Wait, is this the right one? This is a different one. The fuck? No, it's roll 243, not 43. Congress had another opportunity to block our taxpayer dollars from enabling Israel's crimes. While our movement grows, we cannot keep funding suffering abroad while telling workers' families we cannot afford quality health care, housing, or education, says Summer Lee. Yeah. Roll call is not available. So unless you go into C-SPAN, the live footage from C-SPAN, you're not going to be able to figure out. You're not going to be able to figure out whether or not. Doors open. Yeah, the roll call is not published yet. So I don't know why people are saying Haley Stevens definitely voted no, unless they saw it. Unless they were watching C-SPAN and tracking it. We're not going to know yet. More Democrats either didn't vote for or voted no, 98, or present, 10, on cutting all aid to Israel than Democrats that voted yes. That said, it is a seismic shift in U.S. foreign policy. 48% of the Democratic caucus, Massey was the lone Republican yes. What was interesting is Pelosi actually voted yes. Nancy Pelosi says she will vote yes on the Massey amendment to withhold aid from Israel. This is obviously symbolic. But Nancy Pelosi understands which way the winds are blowing. Okay? This is important to recognize. It's important to understand that Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker Emerita, one of the most impactful Democrats in Congress, recognizes which way the room temperature is shifting and is moving along with it. She has all the power to just, if she's out after this season, she has literally nothing to lose. If she wanted to basically say, look, I want to continue funding Israel, it's very important, then she would have voted yes on this. She would have voted no on the Massey amendment. It's really interesting because Hakeem Jeffries is Nancy Pelosi's hand-selected candidate to run the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives. Today, the Massey Amendment presents an unfortunate choice to the House. As one who is committed to a strong U.S.-Israel relationship and supportive of a two-state solution, I respect Leader Jeffries' decisive proposal to achieve a just and lasting peace. The United States must be a force for security and stability. The American people are rightly demanding an end to perpetual cycle of war, and the Netanyahu government cannot maintain its current course. Therefore, while this amendment is ill-conceived, I vote yes for the message that it sends. She knows it won't pass. If she was the lone deciding vote, of course she would vote in favor of it. She's always been very savvy politically. It's a PR move, but it's still one that signifies something changing. I'm just saying, it's still obviously dog shit, and I need you guys to understand this doesn't mean anything, and that's precisely the reason why these guys even have the level of comfort to vote no, for the most part, with the exception of like Summerlee, AOC, Ro Khanna, people like that. Like all of the other 100 Democrats that voted yes, voted in favor of the Thomas Massie Amendment, that in the past have never taken a significant position against Israel, are doing so because they want the benefits of it, which means that the environment has shifted dramatically in our to the side of truth, to the side of justice, at least amongst the base. That means there's such a tremendous amount of appetite for someone to actually tell Israel to fuck off that 100 Democrats voted. I need you to understand, in comparison to where we were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where we were 10 years ago, this is unfathomable. This is an unfathomable seismic shift. Seismic shift that still is utterly meaningless in the grand scheme of things, because obviously the amendment was struck down because there's always enough votes. Just this morning, people were expecting 40 Democrat votes when we actually got 100. That's movement, but not enough. Yes, and there will always be spoilers. Hakeem Jeffries will ensure that there's always spoilers regardless. So what we have to do is mathematically make it impossible for them. Okay? So we still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go. Obviously, half of the Democrats are still bought and paid for by Israel. Half of the Democrats are still bought and paid for in general. Why do the Republicans vote no? What do you mean? They're fucking dogs. Why are you not teaching at Streamer University? Because it's Streamer University every day in here where I'm teaching you geopolitical crises that are taking place all around the world. In any case, like I said, 74% of Democrat voters, 74% of Democratic Party voters want to cut off aid to Israel. The fact that only half of the Democrats are comfortable with that is still devastating. What does any of this have to do with socialism? You're right, buddy. You're right. Fuck the Palestinians, right? Who cares about American foreign policy in the MENA region? Who cares about all the Iranians dying, all the Lebanese people dying, all the death and destruction that's taking place? Are they all socialists? Good bait. Good bait. Thank you. On Seamus and Dylan Saba's podcast, Matt Petty said that the Republican base is where the Dems were 5 years ago, but the trend line suggests that most Americans will be opposed to Israel over the coming years. Quite a departure from being ignorant to foreign policy. Yes. Yes. But it's good. The sign of positivity here is that foreign policy is no longer seen as a separate thing. For the longest time, and it's not separate. Foreign policy and domestic policy are tied to one another. American experiences here are impacted by our foreign policy over there. But for the longest time, Americans did not make that connection. Now they are. Israel and the attitude shift against Israel has played a major role in this. Okay? Americans are more in tune with AIPAC. They're more aware of corporate PAC expenditures, more aware of a foreign policy apparatus, a foreign country's influence on American elections. This is a good thing. It's a positive change. Obviously, we're not there yet, and we have to keep pushing. And it's incredibly important that we have to keep pushing. What do you think that triggered that shift? 9/11? No, October 7 triggered that shift. Even with 9/11, Americans, by and large, were in support of the global war on terror. And it took 20 years for them to recognize that it was an abject failure and then a lot of money was spent on it. That money could have been spent on healthcare, for example. But even then, they weren't angry enough. Whereas now, with the level of frustration that is mounted against not only America's this unbelievable illusion that America has with this foreign country, Israel, but its direct impact on domestic concerns has frustrated Americans and have made Americans realize that foreign policy and domestic policy is inseparable. All the money that we're spending overseas could be spent here instead. Okay? This is a good thing. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. Everything that the government is doing, everything that the Democrats are doing to control the situation is obviously another hurdle that we have to fight back against, but always be cognizant of the fact that we have the people, okay? And that's part of the reason why we can't let up. We can't feel discouraged. We can't be nihilistic. We can't lean into like idiotic black-pilled narratives that change is not happening fast enough, okay? Roll call is up for the recorded vote for the Massey amendment. Let's see what Stevens did. Wait, it's not. It's in the no's. Yeah, Stevens also voted no. There you go. Unsurprising. Expected. I don't think that's accurate. How are there 421 no's? Yeah, I don't know why they're... Yeah, it says 211 Democratic no's. I don't think that's correct. It might be... Yeah, this might not be accurate. Oh, this makes more sense. There you go. Republicans on the no side. All Republicans with the exception of Thomas Massey voted no. 98 Democrats voted no as well. And there was one independent that also voted no. Yeah, Stevens is on the no column, obviously. Moskowitz is as well, as you can see right here. Gottheimer will also be a no. There it is. Expected. These are all expected no's. On the yes, you have Gravalha. Let's see if there's anything interesting here. Kana, Lee, of course, expected. Thomas Massey, it's his own amendment. Look to see if your congressperson is on the I column. Interesting that Jake Auchincloss was in the I column. That's interesting. DeGette voted aye. That's also interesting. It's just like probably should have had that energy beforehand before you got taken out. But, you know, I'll take it. Part of the reason is because these are all the Congressional Progressive Caucus members. So, unlike Hakeem Jeffries, Greg Kazar was telling the Congressional Progressive Caucus, I believe, to vote yes on this. Where is Sanders? Dog, this is the House of Representatives. What are you talking about? Bernie Sanders is in the Senate, the upper chamber of Congress. Yeah, 108 targets acquired for DSA. Straight up. I agree. Jamie Raskin voted yes. Isn't he pro-Israel? No, Jamie Raskin's pretty woke. I don't know if push came to shove, if he was the deciding vote. I don't know how he would vote, but I mean, he's pro-Israel in the same way that most of these guys are, but he's fairly woke regardless of his pro-Israel position. He's a little bit like Nadler. He's like Nadler. They're definitely better than the mean when it comes to Israel, but they're still, pro-Israel, of course. Wesley Bell in the nose. Yeah, I mean, that's unsurprising. Again, AIPAC stooge Wesley Bell running against the incumbent that Cori Bush will defeat, inshallah. Wesley Bell would not be occupying the seat that he's currently occupying in Missouri if it wasn't for AIPAC. Anyway, if you're surprised that your congressperson voted aye, understand that they know that the vote doesn't have impact. They just want to make a statement. But it's still valuable that they're making such a strong statement against Israel. It would be far stronger if this was a real vote. But,
matters above all else, which is power, and I agree with you, is where is this power coming from? For me,
let's get back
from my perspective, it's coming from the ability of the United States, after the demise of the Bretton Woods system, to recycle other people's money, profits, capital. And then, of course, China. So once it started recycling Chinese profits, then you had, in the 1990s and the noughties, you had globalization, you had the Wall Street bankers going absolutely berserk, and so on. So up until now, the capacity of the United States to recycle other people's surpluses has been going hand in hand with its capacity to project military power, not just in the Gulf, but everywhere, all over the world. And here is where I think our paths converge, because you heard a few weeks ago, during this war in Iran, Scott Bessent announced that he was giving a $20 billion swap line to the Gulf states, which is, it sounds absolutely crazy, ridiculous. I mean, the Gulf states, between them, they have around $6.5–7 trillion of dollars of assets, of reserves, of liquidity. Why do they need $20 billion from Scott Bessent? My interpretation, John, is that Scott Bessent was not bailing out the UAE or Saudi Arabia or Bahrain. No, he was signaling to the markets that, guys, I know that you're worried that we are going to lose around $2–2.5 trillion in the next 18 months of money surpluses from the Gulf states that would be coming towards Wall Street. It's not coming. I am prepared to step in and to make up the difference. And I don't think he can, because, the Fed has the capacity, as it proved in 2008, 2009, to provide these swap lines ad infinitum. Scott Bessent, the Treasury, cannot. He has a very, very tight budget. So there you are. So I hope that this intrigues you as an idea of how to enhance your power analysis and the reasons why this war may prove, unlike all the other wars, a bridge too far for the United States hegemony.
Just one very quick point, then I'll turn it over to Katie. I think that you and I agree completely that military might has an economic foundation, and it's really the economic foundation that matters the most. And what you're saying, I hear, is that despite the military defeat in Vietnam, the United States was doing things at the economic level that, if anything, made it stronger. And that's why military defeat did not matter. I agree completely with that.
It actually helped.
It helped. No, that actually helped. It was a force multiplier. That's your argument. And I agree with that. But it also seems that what you're saying is that the situation may be different now. In other words, as a result of the Iraq war, we have done things to the health of the American economy that are going to damage our position moving forward.
Indeed, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that, look, Donald Trump, in his first year in office now, during Trump 2.0, he secured commitments from the Gulf states of about $3.7 trillion over the next 18 months. $2 trillion would go to AI investments, data centers and all that in the United States, not in the Gulf, and $1.7 trillion armaments. Now, Scott Bessent knows that this money is not coming now because of the liquidity problems that the Gulf states have. Dubai hotels are almost empty. Natural gas and oil doesn't flow like it did. All bets are off regarding that 3.7 trillion that was going to arrive in Wall Street to keep recycling other people's money, other people's Gulf state capital through the markets of the United States, and to finance, importantly, much of that money would be purchasing treasuries, would be financing the American military, the American government, as well as equities, as well as real estate. So unlike all the other wars, none of the previous wars did anything to damage that recycling mechanism. That is my point.
But what would you say to the argument that actually, if you look at what Trump is doing today, he's being motivated, or he is motivated by economic considerations, right? That he knows he has to put an end to this war because it's going to do enormous damage if it continues to America's economic position in the world, to the world economy. And he's in a very important way sort of accepting your logic at a very general level, and he's backpedaling like crazy to do everything he can to restore the status quo ante.
Are you saying Trump is a Yanist?
Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, I was joking. I was saying, are you saying Trump is a Yanist or a Varoufakisian? Yeah.
No, not in the slightest. What I'm saying is that, Scott Bessent is a smart man. He didn't break the Bank of England together with George Soros because he was a Dumkov, right? And I would not be at all surprised if he had a word with the president and said to him, Donald, we are running a very serious risk in the markets because we're going to lose $2 trillion in the next 18 months that will not be recycled through Wall Street. So stop this war now. So essentially what John is saying is exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
And you said at the beginning, Yanis, that you thought that Trump had a lot of good intuitions, that he was not completely a Dumkov. That's why you were saying you thought that you didn't believe that he bought Netanyahu's rhetoric about toppling the regime with air power alone.
Well, I love the man, but I do not suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. I read what Stephen Miran says. I pay very close attention to Scott Bessent, to his economic team, and they have a plan. And you know what, John and Katie? Their plan has been working until Iran. They won everything. The tariff war was a complete, utter success story. Don't listen to economists whose models, have a spasm when you throw tariffs at them. The tariff war against the European Union was won by Trump. He had Ursula von der Leyen on her knees in his golf club in Scotland, accepting new tariffs being slapped on European manufacturing exports to the United States, while the European Union was taking down every single little tariff that it had on American exports and offering him something that was not in her gift to offer. Remember, Ursula von der Leyen promised him that by the end of 2028, Europe would invest $700 billion in the United States. Ursula von der Leyen doesn't have that money. She can't direct, BASF and Rheinmetall or whoever to invest this money in the United States. So he was winning. With China, he didn't win that war, but very, very quickly he stepped back, he retreated. He had a bromance with President Xi. They're going to meet again, and there's going to be a detente. There is a detente when it comes to the tariff war. But he is earning $300 billion every year from his tariffs. Everything he's been doing has been working until Iran. And I still insist that he was pushed into this. He didn't choose to dive into it.
Yanis, just to put Katie's question to you in slightly different words. Aren't you basically saying that there's not much daylight between you and President Trump in terms of thinking about how the world operates?
Well, you see, there is a very well-known distinction between how the world operates and how I think it should operate, the normative and the descriptive. Right. I think that the world we live in, the world that shaped the so-called globalization, the so-called rules-based order, my goodness, I lose the will to live when I hear that expression. But, that's the world that Richard Nixon created in 1971. And it is clear to me that Trump's people, I don't know what he knows and what he thinks and how smart he is. He doesn't look particularly smart to me. But then again, Richard Nixon was a madman. And yet he shaped through the Nixon shock with John Connolly, with Paul Volcker, with Kissinger, with all these people. They shaped the world that we live in. And this is how I understand the world. I understand the world in that context. So from his perspective, what he's trying to do, what his team is trying to do, is trying to maintain the advantages that deficits have bestowed upon the United States ever since the Nixon shock.
Yanis's theory is that Trump knows what he's doing. Or at least the people around Trump know what they're doing. And they're trying to restructure the international markets in a way that benefits the United States because finance capitalism is no longer benefiting the United States as much. I guess. What is this? The reporter at Dropsite News thinks is liable to quote Hasan verbatim because it makes him look bad. Yes, this is the American Enterprise Institute guy. He's not a centrist. He's a right-winger. The statement is written on that flyer. Hasan did not say Jews are inbreds as verbatim as you assert. The flyer was publicly disseminated. It is immensely damaging to Hasan's reputation to claim that he said people belonging to a specific religion are all inbred. Yeah, I mean, Cuomo did the same nonsense too. I don't know how much I trust the Hormuz letter on potential boots on the ground, for the record, you know. Trump is looking to expand U.S. military operations in Iran by not only bombing energy sites and power plants starting next week, but also sending U.S. ground forces to fully seize Karg Island and other Iranian islands along the Strait of Hormuz and bombing the deepest and most fortified mountain in Iran, the Pickaxe Mountain. He said those things. Trump held a Situation Room meeting Tuesday evening to discuss the seizure of Karg Island and other territory along the strait using U.S. ground troops, including Abu Musa, Greater Tunb, and Lesser Tunb. He also said, we're going to take out Pickaxe Mountain. He can't do any of those things. Like, unless he wants to throw U.S. Look. The reason why he hasn't done it thus far is because obviously there's a level of military action that Trump is comfortable with. We know what that level is. Okay? The level of military action that Trump is comfortable with is air campaigns, decapitation strikes, quick and rapid action. This is a unique situation because he hasn't been able to achieve any of his military objectives. He hasn't been able to restrain Iran. He hasn't been able to successfully attrit Iran's strike capabilities. So it's just continuing. So he might get erratic. He might actually do something crazy that he hasn't done before. But so far, Trump has obviously been very restrained when it comes to putting boots on the ground. Here's the issue. American troops that he puts on any of those Iranian islands are going to get fucking lasered. Okay? They're going to get lasered. So if we're currently bleeding and there's no way to, through air campaigns, stop Iran from controlling the Strait of Hormuz, trying to gain leverage with this suicide mission is going to be the dumbest decision that Trump has made thus far in a series of unbelievably dumb decisions. Because if you recall, one thing that I've said since day one, since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury, is that the reason why Americans are not out in the streets and freaking out over this is because there hasn't been any significant damage that we can see, that we can visualize to American naval assets. They've been able to paper over a lot of the damage to say, oh, it's fine. It's like laundry fire here and there. And the most consequential act was when the F-35 fighter jet flew over during a bombing mission, and the Iranian air defenses took it out. That was a huge panic moment for the American side. Now, if America tried to militarily invade any of the island chains off of the Iranian coastline, they would get pummeled with Iranian ballistic munitions. There is no air support there. There is no way that you can establish a forward operating base. Even if the American military could fairly easily take over Karg Island with conventional arms and defeat the Iranians stationed on Karg Island with their conventional arms and conventional tools, which is fairly easy process, there is no way that they would be able to establish a forward operating base on Karg Island without the Iranians destroying it and killing every single troop on that forward operating base. This is a big penalty. This is far too large of a penalty that the Trump administration would take on. Unless he's just completely lost his mind, I don't expect Donald Trump to put boots on the ground. Okay? But let's say, what is... Kaya's back. Knocking on the door. let's say that, wait, hold on. I need to, Kaya. I don't know if you can see her shadow. She keeps pawing at the door. But what was I saying? Oh, let's say they're able to conventionally defeat through conventional means, defeat the Iranian military on Karg Island, fairly easy. Let's say through some stroke of good luck, they were able to set up a forward operating base, and let's say they're capable of defending it. Oh shit! Jesus Christ, that scared the shit out of me. Okay, maybe let her in. Okay, I'll let her in. Anyway, as I was saying, even if even if America was able to establish a forward operating base on Karg Island, what is this? The RGA scheduled to go with a new ad, attack ad? Oh shit, I'm in another attack ad. Let's go. Fuck. Even if the United States of America and the military was capable of establishing a forward operating base on Karg Island, they have no way of maintaining any kind of supply line because all of the bases, the American bases that are close enough to Karg Island have been reduced to rubble and are within striking distance. They're within striking distance of Iran, which is precisely the reason why they can't even establish a supply line. So it's over. There's no way to do it. Anyway, we're obviously going to get to the drama, both in the Wisconsin race and also drama taking shape in the Michigan race in a little bit. I do want to hear from JD Jedediah Vance because he has a couple different places. He has a couple different moments from this Joe Rogan experience that are obviously frustrating. JD Vance calls himself a reasonable moderate between pro and